recorded, just for your information. Hey everyone, welcome to another Open Cluster Management Community Meetings. Today we'll be discussing the service token registration that Q Zhang is going to walk us through and Wei Liu. But before we get started, I want to give a little quick context of why we're discussing this topic. So thank us from the community um, has been. Oh, Matt can't see the screen share. Okay, let me.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So thank us from the community discovered that EKS cluster cannot be used as a hub cluster on OCM, and that is due to EKS doesn't really support the certificate client authentication. So Wei Liu and Q Zhang have proposed maybe we can introduce another way of cluster registration through service token. So that was the quick 2 seconds background context. So Wei Liu and Q Zhang, feel free to take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a rough idea. Nothing has been really concrete. But maybe I share my screen. Oh, E2. Sorry, just 1 minute. Oh,
Hello. Yep, we can see your screen now.
okay. Yeah, it's more like we want to discuss about the use case and whether we really need to do this. So originally we were thinking about, so currently we are using a CSR based mechanism to do the authentication and authorization between managed cluster and hub. The managed cluster need to send a CSR request to the hub, and the hub controller need to approve that, and then you have the client cert on the managed cluster side to connect to the hub. That mechanism applied both for the registration, the classlet itself, and all the add-on will have a separated CSR. But we see some feedback like EKS is one problem that they currently don't support the API server client CSR signer, so we cannot sign. So on the hub side, we cannot sign such CSR, and so we won't be able to using EKS as a hub. There are some other issues in the community talking about they will not use CSR, they just forbid the CSR. So they're asking whether we can use a token based. And the third scenario is like if you have kind of HTTP proxy or HTTPS proxies, to connect to the hub from the managed cluster. Most of the time that does not support MTLS, so CSR cannot pass through HTTPS proxy easily. In that way, a token is a more easier way in the proxy environment. So that's all the background. So this idea is not, we just have very initial discussion. We don't have any concrete solution yet, but the idea is more like a reverse path of the managed service account. So it's more like you can send a token request back to from the managed cluster to the hub cluster. Maybe that's another API that is called token request. And then it can somehow mimic the CSR, like you need to approve this request, and then we will provide a service account token for this based on this token request, and then the agent can request a token from the service account and then rotate the token based on that. But that will certainly need a lot of refactoring because we currently just support CSR. So we need to both have another authentication mechanism using token for both registration and all the add-ons. Yeah.
I think Huijin dropped.
Hello.
Hello, you're back.
Yeah. When did I disconnect? I don't know. But
you mentioned that we need to refactor a lot of code to support both.
Yeah. So that's right. We need to have another authenticator. So in addition to the certificate-based authenticator that can be used by both the registration itself and also can be used for the add-on. So yeah, that's pretty all that we have today. I think we need to discuss the first one is why do we really need that? And is there any concern of using token-based authentication?
Dan, do you have any opinions on those two topics? On, first of all, why we need it, and second of all, any security concern regarding using service token authentication?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess on the first kind of question about whether we need it or not. So I suppose from my perspective as a user setting this up, we're quite wedded within Expedia to EKS. So essentially, if we're forced to go down the route of running at least a hub on something like kubeADM or something like that, that kind of creates an additional kind of management overhead. So now we're back in the business of running etcd and everything like that. So I quite like to defer that to a cloud provider when I can. So I'd say there's kind of valid use cases for it, right? For supporting the hub being able to run on EKS. And I guess from the security concerns, like I can certainly see this is not quite as ideal as the CSR in that the credentials now for the worker cluster now exist in kind of two places, right? Which is not that great. It'd be nice if only the worker had those. But that said, that's kind of not massively different, I think, to some other kind of projects. So I think how we're using KubeFed at the moment, right? We have tokens for all the clusters on our control plane already. So I don't see this as being massively kind of different from that. So no concerns. And it feels to me like quite a generic kind of solution for all of those problems, as was indicated. I suppose my only question is, like, I guess there is a third kind of unexplored option, which is deferring or delegating rather all of this out to the IAM provider within the cloud you're in. So certainly, you know, within AWS and Amazon, there could be a third option where you use maybe IRSA, so the IAM roles for service accounts on the hub, on the Spoke side, and then on the hub side, you could map, essentially create IAM roles per cluster and map that to the group for that cluster that you currently define. So that I suppose that option has a downside, which it pulls code, kind of makes it very tightly coupled to a particular cloud provider, which maybe you guys don't want to kind of do that. But I suppose on the other side, it takes away that kind of double kind of credential problem that you're referring to. So I don't know if it's worth exploring that as well, but certainly what I've heard about the service accounts, I think that kind of at least solves that immediate kind of problem blocker for using OCM Hub on a EKS cluster.
Yeah, I think using IAM is an interesting idea. I guess whether I'm not quite sure about IAM system, but probably we could have a kind of interface that we can use that to inject to different IAM provider. Like, so one of the scenario that I can think of is you probably could provide an IAM credential for the registration, so the registration just know what the IAM credentials for a certain cloud provider, and then that it's automatically registered to the hub. So I think that might be an interesting thing.
Yeah, I know EKS and OpenShift on AWS both recently got some AWS integration, some deeper Kube API integrations. Azure has something similar for AKS. I'm not sure if Google has something for GKE. I haven't explored that space as much. But if we do have a kind of a layer of abstraction, we could potentially have those different key management services issue your keys or your service accounts or your account constructs and use the Kube API abstractions to handle that. So that is an interesting idea. I think that would be, I almost think that's more of an architectural, if we can make an architectural decision that allows us to create extensions and do that later. And have one option is you use service accounts in Kube. The other option is you can use these actual account constructs and then write shims to leverage AWS's integration, leverage Azure's integration for AKS and that sort of stuff. That might make it more extensible in the future. I also know just from recent reading that some of those integrations are maturing pretty quickly. For EKS especially, as you noted. So I think that might be a good space to make sure we can accommodate.
What about in terms of implementation difficulty, Qujang? Would doing the third-party IAM support be a bit easier than the service token, or they're both touching around the same layer of code? They're both gonna be a huge refactoring either way.
I think so using service account is easier than an IAM integration. I don't have a clear picture on how we can do that yet with IAM integration. But I I think giving you the service account, we might need another API. But this with something like the token request or something different that just like the registration to request a token to the hub. Yeah, maybe it need to start with a proposal in the enhancement, and then we can try to find out what's a sensible API to make.
So it seems like this this proposal is quite technically challenged, I would say. It's quite difficult for an external contributor to make. So how do you recommend, say if Dan wants to propose, this API change, how do you recommend him or another external contributor to create that proposal? Is there any recommendation that you want to suggest? Because this is a pretty lower level OCM technical code.
Yes, I don't know. I think so firstly, I think we want to have a similar flow like we use CSI. So maybe we can start with some use case as we just discussed, and a very simple API shape about how you can build a protocol between the two sides. That just, I mean, it's more like a use case, and what's a protocol that we need to make between the two sides. So you can do the double opting things just like the third way. And maybe not much about the implementation, but it need to consider what can, so both the registration and add-on. So what's the impact on the add-on need to be considered. Maybe not, maybe start with registration, but we can discuss on that. Also on the add-on part also. I think that will be much complicated.
For the implementation of the token approach, this is a very early document. The couple of points I would add is there needs to be a way to, say, manually renew the tokens and manually revoke tokens in the case some token is known to be compromised. We need to be able to go through and remove that access.
Yes.
I think setting a sensible default value, if we're taking similar to the managed service account approach, is probably also good practice so that people aren't by default setting, say, 5-year lifetimes for the token.
Yeah, I think that revocation use case in particular, that's going to be really common, right? Because we have ephemeral clusters, they come and go. So even if it's not compromised, you're still going to be revoking them.
Yeah, and I was thinking in that case, we actually were looking at using Vault to reissue certain keys for, AWS keys just for provisioning resources. So that's where having a shim or a layer of abstraction on top of a key management service might be effective. If there is a persistent handshake between hub and managed cluster, and you're able to have that interaction, use a key from a key management service, issue a new key, sync the key over while you still have access, and then remove the old key in a key rotation scenario in an automated fashion. that might be a really good longer term goal of this work, is being able to integrate with your key management service and do that. But that is definitely 2 steps down the road and a couple layers of complexity higher than the simple ask here, which is allow me to deploy on an EKS cluster and have keys issued that aren't not able to be issued on EKS. So maybe that's a future design 2 layers down, using what we build today.
Thank you, Gurney. Thank you, Dan. Does anyone else have any other opinions on this topic? Min Kim, do you have any feedback or opinion?
Hey, yeah, I'm still thinking about that. But for now, I am a bit not sure about the feasibility of a service account token because it's if we are doing this in CSR, we are able to explicitly specify the username and the group and etc. Even there is a field named actual info, which is which allows you to fill in arbitrary key values. But if we are using service account token, the only way to extend the information in that token is the, as far as I know, is the audience. So I'm not sure if the service account token approach can match the requirements in extensibilities. But as for
Yeah.
I think yeah, in other way, I think they are basically identical. Sorry, go on. Oh.
Oh.
No, we heard you. Well, that was a great feedback. I think the reason why service token was first suggested, because I think during the initial bootstrap, we do use the service token to get that initial CSR created in the first place. So I think, in my mind at least, it's sort of like extending or at least somewhat similar to the initial bootstrap. But yeah, that was a great feedback, Lincoln. Thank you.
Yeah, identity is a real problem. Like we today we can set the identity of each add-on, but with service account only I think we cannot. I think that's yeah, that remind me that this is one of the problem that we haven't resolved in the original doc.
So it seems like, based on the discussion so far, we're still quite far away from having this feature. So Dan, would you please edit the doc and add the use case that we were discussed, and then maybe we can take it from there as we go. It seems like they're, even on a high level design, there's still some challenges that we have to solve. In the meantime, can anyone suggest like a sort of another way around this issue so we can support EKS as the hub cluster? Are there any other mechanism we can use? I was thinking maybe maybe another way to do this is through push model. But I guess it's the same thing on push model because you still need to authenticate the managed cluster.
you pushed a problem down to all your work. rather than the one
Yeah.
Yes, the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say service account token seems to be the easiest. It is the easiest and quickest solution. We just admittedly, I'm guilty of it, got into the weeds of, well, we can make a more extensible solution in the future. Maybe we just do actually a really great way to do this might be, hey, today we're just going to support. We're going to fall back and we'll make a service account and have tokens, and now we can talk to each other with this token sitting on the hub managed cluster. And then in the future, we just lay a layer of abstraction down on top of that and allow the user to configure what is used, and have a most universal option, maybe a service account, because that's present on basically all of Kubernetes. And then you can have different flavors for certificate for supporting things. Maybe we add key management services and let you configure that. So that might be a great option as well. That way it's customizable and can meet the user where they're at and also meet the security concerns of the user in the future. So good point for extension, good enhancement request, I think.
Yep, sounds good to me. So I'll add the use case to that doc then as a starter for 10.
Are there any other questions or feedback regarding this topic? Are there any other topics regarding the OCM community that you want to bring up? Qiucheng, please go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing is that we are about to release 0.8 July the 8th. So if there's anything that you want to put into 0.8, please do it in this week. And maybe, yes, Mike, maybe next week we should take a quick walkthrough about the current things in the 0.8.
Yep. And just to be specific, do you want us to cut the branches for 0.8 now or wait until next week?
Yeah, until next week.
Are there any other questions, topic, comments?
Will the release branches be created for all the repos under the org? Or do we have to take some manual action on our side in the policy sig group?
I would think that the maintainer will need to cut the branch and tag. And add
Okay,
release tag.
sounds good. Okay, sounds good.
Any other last minute comments, topic, questions? Well, thank you everyone for attending this meeting. That was a great discussion. Take care, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks a lot.